So Tom Allen is set to be the next defensive coordinator for Penn State, replacing Manny Diaz, who went over to Duke to become the head coach. And all I got to say is, yes, this is a phenomenal hire. This is a great hire for Penn State. This is the kind of hire that Penn State and James Franklin wanted to make. And since Tom Allen was available, you go and get him. But was this the right move? I like Tom Allen a lot. I do. So I think it's the right move. There are a lot of pros. I'm going to discuss some drawbacks in the upcoming segment. But Tom Allen, at purely this hire, you are getting a really intelligent defensive mind. One of the best in all of college football. I know he did not work out in Indiana. I know that, but we saw Manny Diaz didn't work out at Miami of Florida, comes to Penn State and back-to-back years leads elite defenses for the Nittany Lions. Tom Allen has a similar setup here where he can do the exact same thing. And there's a lot of evidence to back up why Tom Allen can succeed in Happy Valley despite not working out for the Hoosiers. High energy coach. That's another reason I like this move a lot because James Franklin is high energy. He's emotional, and Tom Allen's going to match that. We've heard James Franklin speak glowingly of Tom Allen in this case, just over the past few years since they played against each other, right? But he's a high energy coach and he's going to match James Franklin's energy. And it's something that I think the locker room will be able to build around as well. There's not going to be a drop off from losing Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz, I think, very concise, but also the same thing, very motivational in that regard. Tom Allen, definitely, you're not going to see a drop off in energy there. For James Franklin, hiring a coordinator, offensive, defense, special teams, right? He's made this point about Stacy Collins as well. But previous head coaching experience is so valuable to him, and it's valuable in this case here. 7 seasons as Indiana's head coach, 7 seasons as a Power 5 football head coach, 7 seasons in the Big Ten as a head football coach. Okay. Manny Diaz was down at Miami of Florida. ACC. I'm not trying to compare the Big Ten to the ACC because that's still a very respectable program that you were coming to after your stint there. But in this case, it doesn't get, you don't have any more commonalities than this. Penn State, Indiana share the same conference, right? It's at the same level, even though the programs are on different levels, right? You still have the same level of competition. Tom Allen gets it. He understands how to recruit in the Big Ten, how to coach against these Big Ten teams, right? Manny Diaz had to adjust a little bit, but we saw how well it worked. But Tom Allen just knows the flow of the conference, knows what it's like to go up against Michigan. I get it. The success wasn't there, but you know what it's like to game plan for Michigan. You know the intensity. Ohio State, Maryland, Michigan State, any of the rest of them. Now, it gets a little complicated when those 4 schools from the former Pac-12 come into the Big Ten. That's a little bit of a different story. But you have 7 consecutive seasons as a head coach at Indiana, Power 5 football, Power 4, I guess, still right. I got to get used to that. In the Big Ten, most importantly. He's coached in the Big Ten. He coached in the SEC for Ole Miss as a linebacker and special teams coach. So the experience, the resume speaks for itself for Tom Allen. This is really why I'm enamored with this hire, honestly, is because of the instant success at defensive coordinator when he's been promoted to those spots. So he was a linebackers coach at Ole Miss, and then he took the South Florida job in 2015 as its defensive coordinator, and then went over to Indiana in 2016 and took over that defensive group and was the DC before being promoted in-house to be the head coach. But at USF, this went from one of the worst defenses in 2014 to an exceptional defense in 2015. Numbers do not lie. The numbers do not lie. They were tied 13th in the nation in tackles for loss, 7.5 per game. Aggressive style defense, right? 14th in interception, in total interceptions, 17 total. 24th in takeaways, so 25. Add 8 more fumbles there. 26th in sacks, 2.62 per game. 31st in rushing defense, 141.4 yards per game. 34th in pass efficiency defense, and 35th in scoring defense. So you are around top 30, if not better, in all the important categories. And Penn State had one of the best defenses in all of the country, ranked in the top 5 in a lot of categories. into whether it was pressures, right? Yards for loss, right? All these different things that Manny Diaz did. And now you're getting someone as a defensive coordinator, right? He's not the head coach. I want to make this a very apparent point. He's not a head coach anymore. Like Manny Diaz, he's taking a step back and he can focus on just the defense. He doesn't have to do all the extracurricular stuff that James Franklin's suited for. Okay. He can focus primarily on making the defense as top notch as it can be. But it's the short turnarounds that are impressive. When he went to Indiana in 2016, this team was one of the worst in the country the year before in 2015, was ranked 120th in total defense and slashed all the categories in terms of total game yardage by 150 yards at least, roughly, right? 140 here, 145 there, but still pretty impressive to just absolutely shed hundreds of yards. Really impressive to go from group 5 to the Power 5 level, right? Now we're back to the Power 5 since that was the time being, but to go to Indiana and basically slash off 100 plus yards off of every category imaginable defensively is nothing short of impressive. And when he was with Ole Miss, that team, that defense was by far one of the best in the nation, led the nation in scoring defense in 2014. They only allowed 18 touchdowns in total over the course of that season. That's just a little over a touchdown per game, right? So the resume does speak for itself. The results are there, even though he wasn't the best head coach at Indiana. And I have an explanation for that. I'll tell you about that in the upcoming segment. Another reason that I really like this move for Penn State, Tom Allen's an excellent recruiter. I'd even argue, just from what we've heard from Brian Smith, who's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and what we've seen, he's a really good recruiter and might even be better. I would probably say that he's a better recruiter than Manny Diaz. Okay. Allen has ties to Florida, if you can believe that, right? He had stints of coaching down in Florida as well as an assistant, coached at the high school level too. And then being in the Midwest, right? Coaching at Indiana and being from there, right? He's from Indiana. He's a former high school football coach at Indiana during his time. He helped land some of the biggest recruits for Indiana in football program history and helped land some of the best recruiting classes as a whole in Indiana football history. So I would say that, yeah, he's either on par with Manny Diaz. I would say that he's even a little better as a recruiter. And you're not going to really miss too much here in terms of the overall style, right? Manny Diaz, high energy, high intensity, right? Demands a lot. Allen's the same way. Similar attacking style defense, right? As you can notice with these statistics that say one of the best in the nation when it comes to tackles for loss in the backfield. So you're getting that aggressive style defense. It's not going to be passive. It's not going to be a lot of zone. It's going to still be aggressive. He coached the linebackers in 2014. So we imagine that he's going to be taking over DC and LB coaching because that's what Manny Diaz was. And well, I would argue, right? That's great that he has the linebacker experience so he can go along with that position group. Again, that's what he coached at Ole Miss, again, with one of the best defensive groups in the nation at that time. But the secondaries that he's able to produce as well, Allen has put together a lot. And you notice that, right? With the passing defense, the interceptions when he was at South Florida, same thing. Indiana, okay, for what it was worth, had some talented secondaries to go along with those teams, even though they weren't the best in the Big Ten consistently. But he has the linebacker experience, but I like what he's able to do with the secondary as well. Hopefully, being able to team up with right Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter. We'll have a discussion about that a little more in the final segment. But I will admit, I was in favor of promoting Anthony Poindexter to this spot. Defensive coordinator at UConn. He was the co-defensive coordinator alongside Manny Diaz in this case, and it just made sense. Was Anthony Poindexter my ultimate top choice right at the top? Well, no, because Elijah Robinson was off the board and D'Anton Lynn was off the board, right? Two former Penn State players who have shown that they're very good defensive coordinators, very good defensive staff members, but they weren't available. And it made sense that Poindexter, who was the co-DC alongside Manny Diaz, would make sense as a natural transition, especially since Poindexter, did turn away from his alma mater when he could have continued to interview and was a serious consideration for that head coaching spot not too long ago. and he stayed. It seemed like this was the idea. So we're just following the paper trail that was led here. But Penn State was truly in a win win situation. You couldn't have gone wrong either way, whether it was hiring outside of the program. If you missed all of your top options, again, Lynn Robinson not available. I got to imagine they were on James Franklin's short list, but Tom Allen becomes available. That's one that's not exactly immediately expected because he is the head coach at Indiana at the time, right? When you're thinking about these possibilities, you're thinking that Manny Diaz might take a head coaching job this offseason. You have to be prepared. And all those hypotheticals, some of them came true. But I think Penn State wasn't going to go wrong either way. You get a guy like Tom Allen, or you promote within, you get Anthony Poindexter. Hiring Allen was a smart move. It was a great move. It's an exceptional move. I give it an A. Okay. Promoting Anthony Poindexter would have also been smart too. Both of those can be true at the same time. Now, Penn State clearly believes that Tom Allen is a better defensive coordinator right now in end of 2023 going into 2024 than Anthony Poindexter, or else they would have promoted AP. That's all there is left to be said about that.